Hey, my name is Shelly. Welcome back to my channel. Since it's summertime and everybody's kind of going out and exploring and trying new things, and a lot of us have extra time because we took vacation or we're off from work or school, what have you, I thought it would be a perfect time to do a recommendation video. This is a recommendation video, kind of like if you like this book, then you might like this book. But this one, I have a bit of a mix to it. I'm adding it. If you like this sci-fi fantasy, you might like this sci-fi fantasy with a sprinkle of romance. So all of the recommendations I will be making today have romance in them. They're not romantic, they're not romantic sci-fi or fantasy, but they do have a romantic element or subplot inside the story, which does not take away from the whole story like often romances do. So with all further ado, let's get started. The first one I would like to talk about is Leviathan Wakes by James S. R. Corey. This is the first book in the Expanse series. This is a sci-fi kind of space opera-y book series that is, I think, 9 books long, plus a bunch of novellas. And it also has a TV show, which is pretty good. This is about a distant future where humans are now taken off from Earth and they live on Mars and they are living on the belt, mining minerals, etc. So we're now in ships and we're traveling across space. There's now a lot of strife between the factions. So, there's like a bit of a war between Earth and Mars, and then the Belters are kind of in the mix. So there's a lot of external strife within this world. If you like The Expanse for that expansive world, where you have different faculties of humans kind of bumping heads and traveling space, I think you might actually enjoy The Blighted Star by Megan E. O'Keefe. Much like the Expanse series, The Blighted Star takes place in a distant future where humans are now outside of Earth and they are expanding. But in this world, the bureaucracy is run by corporations. So the CEO is kind of like a king, and these corporations are running the show. You also have another faction of people that are fighting against the corporations, kind of like rebels, because they don't like the way that basically it's a dystopia, they're infringing on their freedom. They're also actively trying to terraform a bunch of different planets to live on. So in this story, we're following a small team that are on a ship that they're kind of going towards a planet, the newest terraforming planet. But something happens, and long story short, they end up stranded on the planet. Like The Expanse, you have all these different types of people butting heads. So I think that is very similar. The other slight similarity is there is a sci-fi element that is very similar to both of these. I don't want to give it too much away because, plot spoilers, but is very similar sci-fi trope. So if you know what I'm talking about. But the romance in this is just so genuine, so natural, so realistic. Each character has its own agency. They have their own reason for wanting to do things, and sometimes the reason for not wanting to do things. And they both faced with this inner strife because they met this other person that is now making them question their beliefs and their morals and their past. Because of this, I think it's an excellent romance. It is a little heavier on the romance side than some of the ones I'm going to be mentioned later on. But I just finished this book, and I think it's a fantastic read if you like sci-fi with romance. The next recommendations I would like to talk about is The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. The Wheel of Time is an epic fantasy that scopes multiple books. It is an in-depth world, and there's a strong chosen trope in this involved. Personally, I did not like The Wheel of Time. I did not make it past the second book, but I can appreciate that Robert Jordan has made a fantastic world full of different religions, different factions of people, different languages. The lore is fantastic. The magic system is intriguing. There's different types of magic systems. And it's mind-boggling that he could come up with such an expansive world. Although I didn't like his particular writing style, nor did I really care about his character work, I can fully appreciate how magnificent this story truly is. If you like The Wheel of Time, for that reason, I think that you might like the book Rhapsody by Elizabeth Haydon. This is the first book in the Symphony of Ages series. Like The Wheel of Time, this book has a very unique world setting and very in depth. Like there is history, a full-fledged, fleshed out history. There's different languages, different religions, different factors of humans and other species that are outside of, your typical like elves and trolls and whatever. But there's dragons. So if you like dragons, there's dragons involved. I really enjoyed the romance in this book, although this particular book is not very strong, but it does get more intense as the series progresses. But the reason why I enjoyed it is because it is just grown up, mature. They treat each other with respect. The banter between them is humorous. I found the romance to be extremely healthy. Whereas some other popular romances, the men are a little bit more possessive and manly, whereas this one, it does talk about that, but it kind of acknowledges the fact that the male character is feeling a certain way, but there's reasons for that. So it's not just like a guy being a macho man. So if you like The Wheel of Time for the world building, I think you'll definitely enjoy Rhapsodies. If you enjoyed the Netflix show Arcane, I think you might actually enjoy Ashes of the Sun by D'Angelo Wexler. This is the first book in the Burning Blade Silver Eye trilogy. I can never remember that name. And it is a awesome ride. I really enjoyed it. If you like Arcane for their involvement with metals and devices mixed with magic, you will definitely like this. This book also has a strong Star Wars vibe and a strong Final Fantasy vibe. Like they ride giant birds and they have lightsabers and they pretty much use the Force. So this book is about two siblings that get kind of torn apart at a very young age. One sibling, the sister, goes to be trained to basically to work for this evil empire. And the brother, becomes a rebel. So the reason why I want to recommend this video for the romance is it has two. There's one, the sapphic relationship between the sister and one of her teammates. And the other one is between the brother and somebody he meets along the way. And they are just the cutest relationships. Like they talk about their feelings, but not in a sappy way. They show like they get nervous and it's very realistic to how you feel when you get the butterflies about somebody for the first time. And I thought that it was just really sweet. And then, the relationships do expand and grow. And you see that towards the end of the book. It is a trilogy, and the last book just came out this year, and I've been holding off because I don't want to end the world. I want to keep going because I really enjoyed these characters and in this world. An honorable mention, if you like Final Fantasy, I think that you might actually like the Willowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. The reason why I think that those two are comparable, like in Final Fantasy, you have these big beasts that you can control or use. And in this book, there are big beast, the animal companions, like the best type of animal companions. And the magic system is kind of very similar. Plus the romance in this, it's probably one of my favorite romances of all time. It's just a very good romance. So yes. And I couldn't even begin to tell you what this story is about because it's just weird. I think it's one of those books that you just need to pick up and read. The next book I'd like to recommend is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. This book takes place in, where does it say? It says the 18th century in Cairo, and it's about a calm woman named Nari. And there is a lot of jinn. It's very magical, very whimsical. You can feel, like the magic almost has a taste to it, if that makes sense. Our story begins with Nari, who is basically a street con artist. And during one of her cons, she accidentally summons a jinn named Dara. And then the story just goes on from there. If you like the kind of book where you are following a character into a new world, I think that you might actually like The Gods of Men by Barbara Kloss. Like City of Brass, The Gods of Men has the same kind of atmospheric feel, although it does not take place in the desert. It does have that feeling of a character being thrown into a situation and then having to make do, if that makes sense. I'll just quickly read the back. Magic is forbidden throughout the 5 provinces. Those born are hunted and killed. Sable does not know that her magic holds the power over souls. Not until at the age of 9, she plays the flute before the desert court and accidentally stops her baby sister's heart. Horrified by what she has done, flees for her life up north, into a frigid land of exile and thieves known as the Wilds. There Sable lives in hiding and survives as a healer, but now 10 years later, someone or something is hunting her. So in this world, magic is forbidden. We have this character. She did not know her own abilities, and it's very similar to the City of Brass. And they're both healers. So for that reason, I think that you will enjoy this book. Sorry, my memory ran out, so if the angle changed, you know why. Okay, so my next recommendation is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This is about a girl named Vasya who lives in the Russian wilderness where winter just lasts forever. Winter is very apparent in this book. It is very strong in this book. You can feel it. It's almost like another character. In this book, they spend a lot of time indoors telling stories and spending time with each other. The story really starts to take off when her father, a widower, remarries another woman. And lo and behold, the other woman doesn't like Vasya because Vasya is a wild, free spirit. But the story really takes off when Vasya is a bit older. Some strange things start happening to her village. So Vasya takes it upon herself to try and fix this situation and save the village with the help of a frost demon. If you like that atmospheric feel, the cold where it really brings you in, I think that you might enjoy The Daughter of the Forest by Juliet Marillier. This book is about Sosha, and Sosha lives in Ireland during like the Celtic time, and she lives with her father and 7 brothers. Her father gets remarried and brings home a wife that doesn't like the daughter, but instead of just disliking her, she puts a curse on the sons, changing them all into swans. So Sosha is now taking it upon herself to save her brothers with the help of the fair folk. This book has the same quiet atmospheric feel that The Bear and the Nightingale have. So I think if you enjoy it, you'll definitely like this one as well. Daughter of the Forest is the beginning of the 7 Water series, which are a bunch of companion books. And then I believe that there's another trilogy that takes place in the same world. So if you enjoy this book, there's definitely more to read. My next recommendation is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. It is about Laszlo Strange, and he is a junior librarian. And he starts to have these strange dreams about this city with no name. But somehow he knows the name but can't remember it. So he becomes a part of this mission to find this city. And it's very whimsical, very magical, and it just gets strange and stranger as you go along. Sorry, my kids came in and just totally wrecked my train of thought. So in this story, you have these 2 characters that form this unlikely bond. And the story just really takes off from there. If you like that sort of whimsical, mysterious book with a library setting, I think that you might actually enjoy The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is one of my favorite books of the year. And this book is just really strange. That's all I can say. But we do have this library setting where in this library you can find all the information, kind of like the Library of Alexandria was, but this is not that. Like Strange the Dreamer, the reader really doesn't know what's going on in the beginning of the story. It's just, you're along for the ride, and that's all that you can do. It's either you like it or you don't. So I really enjoyed this book. It starts off sort of weird, but then gets weirder and weirder and weirder, and you kind of don't know where it's going. But the reason why these 2 are kind of comparable is because you have these 2 characters that form an unlikely relationship. And that's all I'm going to say. If you liked The Book That Wouldn't Burn, I think you might also like Under the Never Sky by Veronica Rossi. This is a YA dystopian fantasy, sci-fi fantasy that came out in like the early 2010s when dystopians were super popular. The reason why I think that these 2 are comparable is because, like The Book That Wouldn't Burn, you're there's this one hub of civilization where everybody kind of congregates and stays. In this one, I think they're in a shelter because like the world has ended. It's post-apocalyptic, so the world's ended. So they're in the shelter, and outside of the shelter, there is the land is just unlivable. You can't live there, and the people that live there are considered monsters, and just you have to avoid them at all costs. So one thing leads to another, and you have these two characters that are unlikely companions that get together and form a bond. So it's very similar to the book that Wind Burn in that sense. Honestly, they're not that similar. I kind of just want to talk about Under the Never Sky because nobody ever talks about this book anymore. And I think it's a fantastic read and completely underrated. And although it's a like dystopian, it's much more. It's like a dystopian, but it kind of turns it on its head and turns it into something fantastical. And I really loved it when it first came out. I'll probably have to do a reread of it this year. Plus, the UK cover, I think it is, or maybe it's a different country, is just stunning. I wish all of them looked like that. So yeah, if you liked the book that Wind Burn, I think you might like Under the Never Sky. Maybe. The next book is kind of an honorable mention recommendation because I don't really have a book to compare it to other than a genre. So if you like flintlock books, I think that you might actually enjoy Guns of the Dawn by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is a flintlock military fantasy with a little bit of fantasy, not much. It really reminded me like of Gone with the Wind. So you have like this like civil war taking place in this country, and everybody, the people are getting sent out to fight. But unlike Gone with the Wind, the main character is a female, and I can't remember her name. Emily. The main character, Emily, is the one who's going off to fight the war. And she meets a politician, and at first, kind of like Pride and Prejudice, they really didn't get along. They didn't like each other. But as the book progresses, you see their relationship evolve, and it's not a driving factor of the book. Like it's not a main plot of the book, it's a subplot, but it's definitely a sweet, endearing romance where it just kind of slowly grows into something. Plus, this is a standalone book, so if you don't want to continue on with another series, this is a good choice. So that is my sci-fi fantasy with a little bit of romance sprinkled in recommendations. If you sat through my ramblings, thank you so much, and I hope you have a lovely day and hopefully see you soon. Bye!